Hi there, and welcome back to the second episode here of the MMA Flashback podcast. I'm James, and alongside me is my co-host Livio.
Hello.
And welcome to the second episode here, a couple weeks after the first. I'm going to try and get a consistent schedule out for you guys following this one. And we're also probably going to be revealing the next events that we're going to be lining up as well. So we're going to be bringing out on the website, which was recently published today, which is being recorded on Thursday. We're going to end up releasing that on the website, so we'll have a little schedule of what's to come, potentially what lists as well you guys can expect in the future. So Olivia, how are you? Crazy week in MMA.
Mad week. Yeah. One of the craziest in MMA history, for as long as I can remember at least. Where to begin though?
I mean, should we go back to April 1st when it all kind of set off and it was all kind of a bit of a joke?
We can do.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I didn't believe it at first.
I was sleeping and got a text from you and woke up thinking, he can't be laying an April 1st joke on me at this
When it was
time.
April 2nd.
I think it was April 2nd,
yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness. Like many didn't believe it, but obviously we joked about it on the first podcast, seeing about how we still didn't quite believe that they would make it into the cage, and we were right, man. They just can't make it into the cage, those two.
Yeah, it was really bullshit in the end. I was really annoyed. The fact that Dana put it up, didn't believe it for a second.
No.
But then I saw Ariel reported on it, and then I started seeing like other MMA reporters, and I thought,
Ariel put in one of his tweets,
it.
I would never joke about that. And I was like, yeah, he probably wouldn't.
And as soon as I saw that, I thought, damn, that's it. The dream of the fight that has been rebooked for 4 separate years is over.
I kept seeing people saying this is a mass April Fool's. I was like, but the UFC aren't going to get Ariel Helwani on the April Fool's.
It's going to be like weigh-in day, and all of a sudden Tony Ferguson pops up.
Goodness.
But no, I mean, so should we crack into the UFC 223 card and go ahead and talk about that one?
We can do.
So a mixed card in the end. Originally, the main card lineup was supposed to consist of a opener of Paul Felder and Al Iaquinta. Then we were supposed to go into a Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis fight, followed by Renato Moicano and Calvin Kaiser. Yeah. Then the co-main of Rose and Joanna, and finally the main event was then supposed to be Max Holloway taking on Khabib. But it was completely different to what we ended up getting. But we'll go into the main card in a little bit. But first of all, we're going to crack into the prelims. Livio, did you end up watching the prelims?
I did. I watched them on Fight Pass.
Yep.
Couple of fun ones. I enjoyed of all of them. Obviously, the Dunham Mercier knockout, very good.
Fun and kind of surprising way to finish the fight as well, in my opinion.
I think I picked him to lose. I think I picked Mercier to lose that fight, but it was a surprising fight. But nothing too special. I mean, the disappointment of the week that had gradually built up.
I think as soon as we finally got to that first fight, when Mike Rodriguez had stepped into the octagon, we were like, oh, okay, it is here now. We are going to have an event.
And that first fight weren't special either, so it just...
Nah, so we had no Fight Pass prelims after being advertised as a beat. Who we ended up making the main card, probably had the best fight of the night.
Really good fight, yeah. Really good fighter as well.
Yeah. So that he ended up being on the pay-per-view. Originally supposed to be the scheduled first fight, I think it was, on the Fight Pass prelims.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to have Artem versus Alex Caceres, but we'll get to that in the news. But yeah, the first fight of the night was Devin Clark taking on Mike Rodriguez. Ended up winning by unanimous decision, 29-28 and 2 lots of 30-27. I was also watching NXT TakeOver at this point, so I had one eye on that and one eye on the UFC. But what was your thoughts on that? I don't like Devin Clark as a fighter.
It was a boring fight. 30-27 seemed like the correct score to give it. The 29-28 I personally didn't agree with, but I mean, refs can do what they... judges can do what they want, can't they? But not a special fight, and like I said, it just put a dampener on an already sad evening for me. Got better, but didn't start off great.
Yeah, I mean, I had one eye. I think there was a bit of a mental ladder match going on at this point, so I was like, damn, going to be watching that one. But no, I don't like Devin Clark. I haven't been impressed too much with his performances. I think he's a bit of a boring fighter, and he just grinds fights out. He hasn't got a decision, hasn't got a finish inside the UFC yet. Granted, he's 3-1 now, which is not too bad. The only loss coming to Jan Blachowicz, but another win over someone that doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
There we go.
Second fight of the evening, Ashley Evans-Smith took on the GOAT in Beck Rollins. What were your thoughts on this fight?
It was a fun fight. It wasn't a bad fight. Evans-Smith clearly won it. Rollins seemed as if she wasn't, I don't know, with it. She'd throw a few strikes but never followed up with very much. So she just didn't seem like she was 100% there in the fight.
I think she just tried to look for one bang.
She definitely did. She looked like she was trying to get the knockout, but obviously she's going up, isn't she? Going up because she fought at 115, going up. Sometimes that power translates, sometimes it doesn't, especially when Evans-Smith is going down, if I'm not wrong.
Evans-Smith coming down from bantamweight.
Yeah,
this is
so
actually Rollins' second fight at flyweight, previously losing a split decision to Jessica Rose Clark.
So I think she's three losses in a row now or something.
Four in a row.
So it's not good for her. Evans-Smith, obviously the bigger girl, so it's a little bit more difficult to knock her out with that one punch. And the fight went the way that it went when you fight like that. When you go for that one punch against the bigger person, it's difficult to catch them, and that's what we saw.
Yeah, Rollins now joining Artem in the negative record club in the UFC, and I don't expect to see anything from Beck Rollins anymore. I mean, she put on some fun-ish fights, but
it's tough not to get cut if you don't know Conor McGregor, if we're being honest. So.
Yeah, 0-4 inside the last 4 fights, and finished by Paige Van Zandt. Tisha Torres beat her, Rose Clark, and now Evans-Smith. I think it's probably the end of the line for Felice Herring. No, not Felice Herring. Sorry, Beck Rollins. That fight will be coming up in a bit.
very, very, very likely. It's a tough one for her. It's tough to come back from it. I mean, it's not tough to come back from, but it's tough to be given an opportunity to come back from in the UFC.
Yeah, definitely. Next fight then was a really fantastic performance. Olivier Aubins-Mercier.
Canadian gangster.
Yeah, with his lovely, his look overall really. The moustache, the bag as well that he had at the weigh-ins.
Little satchel.
He took on top 15 ranked Evan Dunham, and what a performance. Yeah,
looked solid. Crazy knockout, obviously. No way it didn't win knockout of the night, did it? I didn't see the performance bonuses, but I'm assuming that it did just because it was crazy. It looked a solid fight. It looked like one for the future.
Performance of the night.
Still, how old is he? He's not too old, I wouldn't have thought.
No, and the thing is, he's been working on his striking, which is fantastic. 29 years old, fights at a TriStar.
Exactly. I mean, when you got Faraz Sahabi in your corner, it's tough not to improve as a fighter, not to get better. I mean, we've seen with his fighters in the past. Tough guy, not tough win, good win, and we'll see what he can do in the future. Yeah, it's great as well for Mercier, because that was his 4th win in a row. He's now 7-1 in his last 8 fights, all inside the UFC. And you can't say that he's not on the cusp of being in that top 15. I was listening to the John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast, and they said they expect Mercier to get a tougher test in his next fight, maybe like a James Vick. Is what I personally would like to see, because I think that's a good fight of 2 prospects coming up in the UFC. I don't think James Vick would want that fight. He keeps looking for that top 10 fight, that top 5 fight. But yeah, it definitely wouldn't be a bad fight for those 2 guys, and then winner obviously breaks into that top 10, top 7 upper echelons of fighters. Yeah, so a 53-second knockout then for Mercier, and a performance of the night bonus as well went his way. Dunham was on a good streak going into this fight. He had 4 wins and 1 draw in his last 5. Recently that draw against Dariush, which I think was fight of the night, at the Ferguson versus Lee card, I'm pretty sure it was. But yeah, tough loss for Dunham. Maybe we might see a spiral down in his career. We've seen him bounce back before, but I don't know, he's a little bit older now. Yeah, could be a difficult one. Going into the next fight then, we had Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I butchered that pronunciation. She ended up getting a unanimous decision victory over the previously mentioned Felice Herring. My apologies, it was split decision victory. 29-28, 29-28 went to Karolina, and then a 29-28 went to Felice Herring. Olivia, your thoughts on this fight? I thought Karolina won it without the split decision, if I'm being honest. Yeah. I thought it was... she just seemed more active. She seemed like a previous title challenger, fighting against someone who isn't quite there yet in their career, maybe in the future, but Karolina's obviously still showing that she's despite her Joanna loss and all that, she's still up there in strawweight. Yeah, and I really do think it's between her and Jessica Andrade now to get the next title shot. Yeah, I think Andrade probably gets it, but if Karolina ends up waiting, she'll probably get the title shot after that. She certainly earned it, in my opinion.
coming off, I think it's a 2-win streak now. Yeah, losing to Claudia Gadelha,
it's
bouncing back.
It's a good shout. I mean, it's difficult to make the case for other people in that. I mean, Joanna's lost twice now. I'd be very annoyed if they gave her another rematch after.
I don't think they will. She's been talking about going to flyweight now.
Possibly. But it's a tough one. I wouldn't be upset if that was the fight. I think Andrade probably gets it just because she beat Gadelha in the last fight, isn't it?
Yeah, and then ended up beating Tisha Torres as well.
And obviously Claudia Gadelha and Tisha Torres in her own right, they're both highly touted and both really good fighters. So she probably deserves another crack at the title.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, good win for Carolina. Ended up breaking the 4-fight win streak of Felice Herring. Yeah, I thought it was a fun fight overall.
Yeah, not a bad one.
We move into the pay-per-view now then. Chris Gruetzemacher, previously from the Ultimate Fight. I think it was Faber versus McGregor the season he was on.
I think so, yeah.
He took on Joe Lozon, veteran of the UFC, and it was the first time that we ended up seeing Lozon losing 3 fights in a row.
It's a tough loss. They've got it here as KO, but obviously it was doctor stoppage. Bleeding fairly heavily, I think it was.
I think the cornerman threw in the towel as well.
The cornerman threw in
so
the
it's
towel.
retirement.
Yeah, it's a tough loss, man. But overall, I think it was a good fight for Chris Gruetzemacher, who's showing that he can fight. Obviously, Joe Lawson isn't quite the best anymore, but he can fight with the upper echelons of guys. And I enjoy seeing people throw in the towel when they're losing. I just think it's smart.
Yeah, I saw this as a surprising win. Gruetzemacher coming off 2 losses straight, lost in his return to the lightweight division against Davi Ramos. In my opinion, I thought Lozon had this one all day. But it's a really good victory for him, in my opinion. That's if you discount Ultimate Fighter victories. So the finale win against Abner Lovares. That was Gruetzemacher's first proper win in the UFC. So I was personally surprised by it, and I'd say fair play.
Yeah, it looked dominant. Looked like he was in control of that fight.
So the next fight was a featherweight clash between Zabit Magomedov Sharipov taking on Kyle Bochniak. Yeah, what a fight!
What a fight! Kyle looked crazy, and Zabit looked amazing. He looked very technical, very tough. And Kyle Bochniak, I mean, this is one of those fights where even though Kyle lost, and it was a fairly clear loss, he probably came out looking fairly good in the eyes of most fans.
Yeah, that just brawl bit at the end was just
sticking
great.
His tongue out, shaking his head, everything.
And then the hug just afterwards, it was, they've gone to
nice
war
to
and they've just gone.
It's nice to see it afterwards. But Zabit, man, definitely one to look for in the future.
Calling out Yair Rodriguez post-fight as well. Very interesting.
Both really good strikers. Not a bad fight, that.
Rodriguez is claiming that he has a fight already booked and it's going to be coming out in the next few days. But Coach Mark Henry, did you see the tweet that he put out to Yair? It was really good. So he said that when Yair fought Frankie took a chance on him because obviously he wasn't really well known at the time, Yair. So he said he needs to return the favour because obviously Zabit from Frankie Edgar's camp with Mark Henry, Eddie Alvarez, all them lot, and he said he should return the favour to him. Yeah,
don't know whether it's quite on the same level. I don't think Yair quite has the same name as Frankie Edgar, but I definitely see the comparisons. Obviously, it'd be a nice one for Zabit to get that under his name, to get another to beat another up and comer, another prospect, and push himself towards that title contention in 2019 and beyond, or maybe 2019 and beyond, if we're being honest.
Yeah, and that's something that I like about the featherweight division, because we've got a lot of prospects that are coming up. So you've got Calvin Katey, who, although he came off the loss, didn't look fantastic, but didn't look bad. You got Renato Moiciano, who I think could be a real threat in this division now that we've seen him. Zabit is there. Brian Ortega, a lot of fresh blood in that featherweight division.
The champ's still young.
Yeah, Max Holloway. I mean,
we forget because he's champ, but he's still young himself.
And you've still got the people like Jeremy Stevens.
Yeah.
Jose Aldo could potentially still be a threat. Mirsad Bektik's coming up.
Despite the losses, is obviously still there.
Yeah. Cub Swanson.
Yeah.
It's a really stacked division.
It's good. Obviously, you have people like Khabib after his last fight, not this fight, after the last one, was claiming that he would look after the idea of going down one day. So you never know. Like, there's people going up, there's people going down, and it's both those divisions, 145 and 155. Man, they're just crazy stacked at the moment.
And BJ Penn's last fight was down there.
There we go.
But yeah, the next fight was another featherweight fight, kind of transitioning from featherweights. Renato Moicano ended up leg kicking the death out of Calvin Kattar. Good fight.
Decent fight. Had Kattar winning. Didn't work out the way I wanted it to. I think he was on a really, really strong winning streak beforehand, and obviously Moicano, I hadn't seen much of him. I saw that he lost to Brian Ortega, so I didn't quite think he had it in him, but decent showing from him.
Yeah, it was really good. The leg kicks really did isolate Kattar. Think this was the first fight out of all of the ones before where we made predictions.
Yes.
So it was the first one of the night where we finally got a prediction in. I went for a Moicano decision. Obviously, previously he'd beat Jeremy Stevens and came off a tough loss to Brian Ortega. I thought he was winning the 2 rounds previous to that, and Ortega got him in a guillotine. And I think Moicano really can be a threat up in this division.
Definitely, man. It's tough not to say, especially after a show like that. He called someone out. I can't remember who he called out as well.
I have no idea.
Not all that important, I suppose. But he called someone out, and tough guy, man. Looks the part. Speaks English, and all that helps. When
that Brazilian market.
Exactly. All that helps when you're looking for the UFC to give you that push. So expecting big things from the man.
I'd like to see him go up against Josh Emmett next. I think it could be a good fight, a clash of potentialists. That's another guy who we forgot to talk about.
Yeah.
Josh Emmett, fantastic featherweight prospect. I think that'd be a good prospect fight, both in the top 10 range. I think it'd be really interesting to see how he'd get on. For Calvin Kattar, I'd like to see him go back down, maybe fight someone a little bit lower ranked. Previously had fought Shane Burgos and Andre Fili inside the UFC. So maybe take on someone around that 15 to 13 mark. Could see him go around there.
Yeah. I think, I'm just looking at it now, I think he called out the winner of Frankie or Cub.
Okay, could
Not
be
a bad shout out.
maybe a bit of a high prospect.
For sure.
Might give him the loser of that fight. But yeah,
Reach for the stars and then land somewhere in between, I suppose.
if you're calling out, you might as well go for it.
Exactly.
So now we move into the co-main event of the evening. We had the Women's Strawweight Championship on the line. Rose Namajunas, the champ, took on former champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And yeah.
Dominant win. Not quite dominant because she lost a few rounds, but very good win from Rose.
The judges saw this 49-46. I saw it 3-2. I saw Rose winning the first 2 rounds and the 5th. 1-2-5. Joanna probably won 3 and 4, but it was judges saw it as 4-1.
Yeah, a little bit, not so much controversy, but Joanna complaining after the fact. She thinks her strikes should have won her the fight, but obviously you can't win a fight just based on pure numbers, especially if most of those numbers are coming from 2 rounds as opposed to the whole fight.
And it was mostly significant strikes that Joanna landed. She didn't really land... I think Rose outstruck her, but Joanna landed more significant strikes. So, I mean, she can't really complain, but I think that Rose won the fight.
Yeah, 100% agree, and she proved me wrong, man, because I picked Joanna for this fight.
I think I went Rose decision as well.
I think you may have done. I picked Joanna for this fight. I thought she'd get it, she'd win, and then we get the third clash of the two, the final decider. But Rose, man, I mean, we've seen her grow from obviously her loss on the Ultimate Fighter finale to where she is now obviously champion, and it's nice to see, man. She seems like a nice person, and it's really nice to see because you get so used to the Conor McGregors and the trash talk and all that. It's nice to see someone that just doesn't play that game and just does her job and then goes home.
And the crazy part of this fight might not have even taken place. The dolly that went through the window, it landed right next to Namajunas.
Yeah,
and she said she was a bit shooken up. You could see it the weigh-in.
See, we were thinking about remaking some of our picks, and I was thinking in my head about what I would change if anything, and I thought that was a definite. If a fighter's getting scared by stuff like that and thinking about not fighting, I was like, she's not with it. She's not going to win this fight. Proved that none of that was true and that she just went out there and did a job.
Even in the walk-in, Pat Barry with the massive hug, it was fantastic. I'm really happy to see Rose win the fight, and the fact that she beat Joanna in a straight-up kickboxing match as well. The last minute of the round, she got the takedown, but before that,
no lucky
straight-up
punches.
kickboxing.
No lucky punches. Not that the last fight was a lucky punch, but there was arguments. People were saying she got a little bit lucky with that. You can't make that argument now, man.
But that left hook.
Yeah.
That left hook.
I her a couple of times in this fight as well.
Yeah, she was catching her, and Joanna needs to learn. she needs to learn. She needs to learn to evolve her game, in my opinion.
It's difficult when you're that small and you still got that power in your hand. But there's not much that people can do.
Going into the main event, then we had Khabib Nurmagomedov taking on the 11th ranked Al Iaquinta. Al put a good fight up, but overall, it was Khabib time.
Quite clearly Khabib time. Although many people thought that he came out looking maybe worse than in some of his other fights.
I don't think so.
Neither do I.
He outstruck a striker, and he
did.
dominated him on the floor.
The argument against that would be Iaquinta wasn't moving very much. He was being hit by the jabs, and they weren't crazy strikes. He was letting him hit him with the jabs and wasn't moving his head too much. The case that I would make, because I texted you immediately afterwards, I think, is I think it might have been a different situation if it was Max Holloway that day.
Yeah, I don't think he would have attempted to stand up as much if Max Holloway was in there.
Maybe not.
I think Khabib knew he'd won it, and I think by the third round, when he decided to start standing up, I think he saw it as time to practice his strikes inside the octagon, because when he's at that elite level now, he's not going to get an opportunity like that against a McGregor, against a Barboza, against a Tony Ferguson, against a Max Holloway. He's not going to get that chance where he can work his jab, see what's working, see what's not.
Very
and
true.
I thought, although Iaquinta didn't put up much of a fight, he had the heart and the desire to stay in there.
The toughness, for sure. It was for a guy coming in on a day's notice. Granted, he was training for someone else.
For
He wasn't training for Khabib. Khabib is a different animal. Completely different situation. And he came out looking not awful. He definitely weren't close to winning that fight, but he didn't look awful. And Khabib making a case for why he is the true champion. Obviously, he's got the belt now as well.
Yeah, so Khabib now the UFC lightweight champion. So interesting to see that one play out, how that division is going to go. I mean, could go anywhere.
It really could. I mean, there's just so many choices, so many options that they have open to them. Obviously, we'll get into a few more of those in the news, but it's going to be a fun 2018 for the 155 division.
I mean, for most weight classes, we saw what happened in that press conference. I'm looking forward to everything.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, 25 years, they got to go hard or go home.
So that's going to do it then for the UFC 223 roundup. Should we go ahead and crack into the news now?
Yes.
So this may be only the second podcast we've done, but it's probably going to be the most stacked news week we've had.
Definitely.
So we begun the 2 weeks of us not being here with some crazy news in the fact that 3 fights from UFC 223 were cancelled.
Tough week.
Yeah.
Tough week. Obviously, we started off. We spoke about at the beginning of the podcast. Obviously, Ferguson fell out, injured.
Oh, 4 then. 4 fights.
Ferguson fell out, injured, and then we got the Holloway replacement.
5 fights.
Holloway fell out, not allowed, and then there was rumours of the Pettis replacement,
which never happened
because
went
supposedly
through.
he didn't want to cut weight or something like that.
Which was only £1, but
either way,
man's decision.
Yeah, I'm sure it was difficult for the guy. Then there was rumours of Felder or Iaquinta.
But Felder fell through because the New York State Athletic Commission would not allow him because of his ranking.
Which is absolute horrendous. I mean, why that's even a thing. Ranking in the UFC, if we're being perfectly honest, we all know is a little bit...
we know it's only there because Fox won it.
Exactly. And it's not controlled by an actual matchmaker. It's controlled by media.
Yeah.
So it's silly to not allow this based on ranking, especially when last year you allowed a amateur boxer to fight Floyd Mayweather. So it's difficult to make, granted different commission, but it's difficult to make the argument that just because of his ranking.
And heck, 2 years ago you had a pro wrestler take on a BJJ black belt.
There we go. I mean, it's silliness. But nevertheless, when you got the Iaquinta fight, which turned out to be alright.
But the fights that were cancelled ended up being Artem Lobov taking on Alex Caceres, which in the grand scheme of things wasn't a big fight.
No.
But it was a fun fight when you look at it on paper. Both men stand and bang. Both men have power and both men have potential for fight of the night.
It's a shame. A couple more fights that were cancelled. Coming back to the Artem fight though, reason it was cancelled, bit of a sticky situation.
So Khabib went up to Artem and slapped him around the head, called him a coward, said to him, if you want to talk shit, talk it to my face.
Mm-hmm.
Conor then flew in from Dublin, not too happy about it, and threw a fucking dolly trolley thing through a bus window, causing Michael Chiesa to get cuts on his face, which I was the most devastated. That's the one fight I was most devastated about. And then causing Ray Borg to get shards of glass in his eyes. And there was speculation he might never fight again. That fight has now been rebooked for the Chile card.
Obviously, the other two fights that just fell through there, as you mentioned, the Pettis Chiesa fight and the Ray Borg, who's
Brandon Moreno.
Brandon Moreno fight. Tough overall for the UFC. Obviously, they came out fairly good with what they were dealt, given the circumstances. Difficult for them. Their biggest star is now out for the foreseeable future, at least in New York. It's difficult for them to allow him to fight, especially with his ongoing.
Especially in America. If he gets a criminal record, an arrest, prison time, he won't be allowed to fight in America.
I'm sure they'll make exceptions. I mean, Floyd's been arrested numerous times. Granted, it's a different sport, but the commissions are still the same.
We saw the white Mike Tyson. Yeah, can't remember his name now.
Mike Tyson went to a prison for alleged rape. We've seen it with Kobe Bryant before, who's also gone to prison for that exact same thing, or was charged with that exact same thing. So I don't think it's going to affect him very much in the future. Definitely in the short term. Obviously, the big thing was that he was coming back September, November time. It's unlikely that that's happening now.
I think we see September fight with Khabib in Russia.
Yeah. I don't think Khabib wants the Russia fight. He keeps speaking about MSG. Obviously, he called out
Georges St. Pierre.
Which I think is a difficult fight for Khabib. It's a fun fight, but I think it's a difficult one for him. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? I know that we have slightly differing opinions on the Conor thing. I think that up to throwing the dolly, he didn't do much wrong. Obviously, the dolly is far beyond what he should have done.
I mean, I went a bit mental on Twitter.
You did.
I mean, it was ridiculous that someone who is a fighter knows that there's fighters on that bus would put himself in that situation. It's like what John Anik and Brian Stan said. If that was a Kenny Florian throwing a dolly at a bus, he'd be blackballed from the UFC. He'd never be in there again. They wouldn't even just think about putting him in there. But because it's Conor McGregor, they've gone, oh, right, we'll let him off. True. Dana White has now changed his whole opinion on the situation. He had an interview where he said he saw where Conor came from. What? How can you say these things when you've got injured fighters on your roster because of the man? He took away paychecks from people who won't be given their win bonus. Half of them people that would have been in that fight would have been granted a win bonus. Granted, Artem probably shouldn't be in the UFC in the first place because his skill set is certainly not UFC caliber. But he's taken away food from that man's family's table. He's taken away money from his bank. He's taken away potential fights up and coming in the future. Artem, granted, he'll go and fight in Cage Warriors. He'll go and fight in Bama. He'll go fight wherever after this. But without a doubt, he took away his chance inside the UFC. He took away Alex Caceres' chance. Alex Caceres was having a tough time, and everyone knows he's got the potential. Everyone knows he's got the current skill set. But with a fight over a lower ranked opponent like Artem, it was something that clearly was meant to be set up for him to get his confidence back up. And Conor's took that away. Conor McGregor took the chance away for Ray Borg and Brandon Moreno to get back on that winning side of things. Took away the chance for them to potentially be the next challenger for Demetrius Johnson. We've seen Ray Borg in the past take on Demetrius Johnson. Brandon Moreno, he was a kid who was on The Ultimate Fighter who was ranked 16th in the rankings. They had a ranking system, 1 through to 16. Brandon Moreno was 16. No one gave him a shot. He main evented a UFC card the other month. Conor McGregor took the chance away from him to fight in New York. Michael Chiesa and Anthony Pettis, they had the chance to push their careers forward. Chiesa coming off a controversial loss to Kevin Lee. Poirier knocked out Pettis in his last fight. Anthony Pettis claims he lost that fight because of a rib injury, so it was his chance for redemption. What happened? Conor McGregor, because of a stupid action, took that chance away from both of them. Al Iaquinta and Paul Felder, they had the chance to have fight of the night and potentially have $50,000 extra in their bank account. But what did Conor McGregor do? Because of the actions before that, that fight fell through.
Not the Paul Felder fight.
Well, no, the whole fight fell through because Al Iaquinta then stepped up to fight Khabib.
But if Max was there, the fight would have still happened.
Pettis would have stepped in. Chiesa then would have been off the card anyway. But we would have seen other
100%. He caused the company troubles. He caused these fighters trouble, and in that regard, it is unacceptable behavior. You can't go out and injure your fellow fighters, especially knowing, because he's a guy that's come up. He's obviously not always been rich. He knows that at certain points people struggle with stuff, and they need these wins. They need this money. They need this win bonus. The fighters got paid, but UFC contracts work where you only get half your money if you only get your show money.
Only got show money. They didn't get their win bonus.
You don't get your whole money. And especially when you've trained for a full fight, you've paid your camp off. It's difficult for the people to handle.
And when you're looking at people like a Ray Borg, like a Brandon Moreno, they're flyweights. They're not going to be getting paid the big money.
No.
What's that? $16,000 probably.
Probably. And then obviously we don't know how much a full camp costs, but I'm assuming it costs a couple of grand.
Well, we don't really know how much camps cost. For example, Bradley Scott the other month meant to fight on UFC London. He claimed that the show money that he got given wouldn't even cover his camp.
There we go. I mean, it is very bad. On the flip side, this is a bus full of fighters. Why didn't a single fighter get off the bus?
I mean, I don't think they were going to in the first place. I mean, you saw the video. Khabib and Iaquinta were ready to get off.
I'm sure they were. I just feel like they should have. I think it's a horrible situation because obviously you don't want bad things like this to happen to fighters. Like you said, Ray Borg's injury could have been career threatening. I mean, if that glass went into his eye, into his corneas, I think that could have damaged his eyesight. It could have even been worse. It could have blinded him.
And he's a man who's just had a child.
The dolly almost hit Rose in the head. I mean, that dolly was thrown with enough power. It could have ended her career, or worse. It could have left her in a state where she couldn't function properly. So it's tough in that situation.
And then he would have had Pat Barry after him.
Yeah, as well as the Irish mafia and all the other people.
And the Russian boys. Jeez.
But yeah, I think the reason that you were saying earlier that obviously Dana's sort of changing his opinion on this, I think he's changing his opinion because he knows how big this fight is now.
Because he knows that he's going to sell probably close to 1.5 million pay-per-views.
I think the Khabib-Conor fight probably does too.
I mean,
in all honesty, I think it probably does too. I think if they, we'll get to Brock in a minute, but I think if there's rumours that he might be coming back still. I mean, if they do a card with Conor and Brock on it, I mean, that is the biggest card in UFC history. Quite easily. I mean, a fight with just Conor now, a card with just Conor is probably the biggest card in UFC history. But bad for the short term, probably not so bad for the long term when this fight finally gets made.
Luckily, we've seen the Moreno Borg fight be rescheduled. Yeah. We haven't had any word yet on the Chiesa fight.
Hopefully that is not too bad, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a cut.
Yeah.
Time it'll heal. I think we're probably not going to see Artem again.
It's difficult. I mean, it would be very telling if they cut Artem, but didn't cut Conor for his part.
Because Artem wasn't actually involved in that whole situation. He was on the bus.
Exactly.
Well, he was on the other bus.
Other bus, yeah. So difficult situation for him. Difficult situation for the UFC to handle. But again, I just think in the long term they'll probably reap the rewards more than they will the damages. I mean, the day after it was on Embedded, the Embedded cameras were there.
I mean, it looked like a scene from Grand Theft Auto.
It looked like it was. I don't think that it was premeditated, but it looked as if the UFC Embedded cameras knew where the hell to be. They were just ready there filming. It was craziness.
That footage, I think, actually was from the Mac Life. That's how they got the footage.
Yeah. Moving on to our next little bit of news. I think you've got some fight announcements.
Yeah, so the day after the whole bus situation, we had the UFC 25th anniversary press conference. So fighters that were involved in that press conference, we had Khabib and Iaquinta, obviously just set up for their fight. But the lineup of UFC fights that are upcoming is something that I want to comment on for how stacked this next 2-3 months are for UFC.
How tough last year was. Bar a few good cards.
This
overall
is crazy.
Yeah.
So the first one is Edson Barboza and Kevin Lee. They're going to be headlining UFC Fight Night 128 on April 21st. We've then got Amanda Nunes taking on Raquel Pennington at UFC 224 on May 12th in Rio de Janeiro. We've then got a fight which I'm really invested in. Kamaru Usman taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio. That's going to be headlining UFC Fight Night 129 in Chile. We've got Stephen Thompson and Darren Till. They're going to be headlining UFC Fight Night 130 in London. In Liverpool on May 27th. That's going to be a crazy fight. We've got Jimmy Rivera and Marlon Moraes, which I think is one of the most underrated fights going into this one. Because there's beef going into that.
Possible title eliminator.
Yeah.
If we're being honest. Jimmy Rivera's definitely up there. His winning streak is crazy as well.
And Marlon Moraes as well. We know how dangerous he is.
Yeah.
That's going to be on June 1st, headlining at Fight Night 131. We've then got Robert Whittaker taking on Yoel Romero in a rematch for the middleweight title at UFC 225 in Chicago on June 9th. And then to round it all off, we have Stipe Miocic taking on Daniel Cormier to headline 226 on July the 7th. We also had some fight announcements announced. We have Cowboy Donald Cerrone taking on Leon Edwards. That's going to be on Fight Night Asia. And we've also got Cody Garbrandt. He's going to be rematching TJ Dillashaw for the UFC Bantamweight title.
Big fights.
Oh, and on top of that, Colby Covington will be taking on Rafael dos Anjos for the welterweight interim title.
How'd you forget that one, man?
That was the show stealer of the press conference.
I mean, he did. I just can't get the Colby thing.
I don't like him, but he is going to make a lot of money.
I understand, but I really don't think he's going to make as much money as we think he is, because he's trying to just go for the bully thing. He doesn't see... The whole thing with Conor's trash talk is that it wasn't just bully, it was funny in a way. I mean, there's the red panty night, there's the who the F is that guy. He was quick and he was witty. Colby seems like he's trying to be mean. Yeah, he just seems like he's trying to be mean. And I don't know how much that's going to translate to fans. But it'll be interesting to see, obviously, for the interim title, which I've said how I feel about this being for an interim title before.
And dos Anjos is a beast at welterweight.
Tear at the moment. He's looking extremely good. Tough fight for Colby.
I think dos Anjos wins.
As well. Yeah,
I think he gets the knockout in this fight. We've seen Covington be troubled before, so I think we see him win. But I don't really want to see the dos Anjos Covington fight, to be honest. Dos Anjos come out with a boomerang shirt, which I quite found funny. But I want to see the Usman Covington fight, because damn, they built that fight massively up through that press conference.
Yeah, Kamaru Usman doing a job. He realised what Covington was going to do. I loved his attire as well. His clothes were really good. He realised what Covington was going to do and said, "No, this isn't your time. I'm here as well. I'm here as well." So told him what's what, and
all Colby could come back with his cool Mr. 30%.
Exactly. I mean, this is what I'm saying. He's not quick. He's not quite as smart as these other fighters. He's just trying to go for the meanness, and it doesn't work for me at least. He's not quite Chael Sonnen level, Conor McGregor level yet.
We didn't get Darren Till at the press conference, but someone who I thought was really underrated during that, Leon Edwards. I thought he came across really well.
Yeah.
Saying he's going to finish Cowboy, which I think he will. I think Leon Edwards probably will beat Cowboy in the end.
It's sad that this is what we've come to, where Cowboy is having to take another fight.
But it's exciting for prospects in English MMA, because I really think that Leon Edwards could be something special. I think he's really good. I really am riding that Leon Edwards train at the moment.
I mean, I don't see why not. Really good showing at Fight Night in London the other month. So yeah, I mean, I'm also looking forward to it. Cowboy obviously is up for a fight. Leon Edwards is saying that he's up for it. He's saying he's going to knock him out, so you can't really complain about the fight.
Post press conference, something that was interesting as well. Raquel Pennington started piping up about Colby Covington. Covington's response, I'm just going to throw this in because I don't know how to respond to this. He said the only reason that she popped up, the only reason why she was annoyed is because Tisha Torres wants his tiny tornado.
I mean, it's just not clever. I just think it's silly.
He's just admitted he's got a tiny dick, is basically what he said.
It is what I'm saying. He's not a smart man. A smart man wouldn't have said tiny tornado. But it is what it is, man. I think when you get to the point where you're not just making fun of people that you're close to fighting or people that are around you, and you're making fun of and trying to bully these fighters that not only do you never have a chance in fighting because they're different weight to you, but they're different gender to you. I mean, what do you gain from making fun of her or for trying this? It's just outrageous. It's silliness.
But yeah, crazy press conference that went on there, and stroving away from fight news. We're gonna be looking at something wrestling related here because it involves Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar.
Some fighters.
So WrestleMania 34 was this past Sunday. We saw the debut of Rowdy Ronda Rousey. She teamed up with Kurt Angle to take on Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. And damn,
you watched it?
Yeah, damn. Ronda Rousey looked really good in there.
I watched a clip of her laying down the SmackDown Of, I think she had Stephanie in the corner and was just laying hands on her basically.
And she did the same to Triple H as well.
I mean, that breaks my heart a little bit. I loved Triple H when I was younger. But from what I hear, she had a really, really good showing.
She really looked like she'd been wrestling for a while. I mean, you could tell it was very choreographed and planned out, and that's something that in wrestling sometimes you don't like to see. That sometimes you like to see it a lot more on the fly.
Okay.
But damn, she looked really good in there.
Now, my concerns. Now, granted, I'm not a huge wrestling. I'm not a wrestling fan. I tend not to watch it unless there's literally nothing else on, or I catch a highlight reel on YouTube or something. My concerns would have been when she was transitioning. I don't know whether you're the same. How she's like on the mic, because in the UFC, I never really enjoyed Ronda's trash.
Oh yeah, damn, she's bad. She's really bad. But
she seems a little bit stale.
Gone on this route where she's going to be a silent killer.
Okay.
So Stephanie McMahon on the Raw after Mania come out, was like, yeah, my friend Ronda Rousey, gave her a big hug, armbar.
Okay.
Stephanie McMahon's now walking around with a broken arm.
With a wrestling broken arm.
Yeah, in kayfabe terms, it has a broken arm.
But yeah, I mean, it's nice to see, despite what UFC fans, I think for whatever reason, many of them don't like her anymore.
I mean, I didn't see the point in people getting involved in it and hating on it. She came into this sport and did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
She changed women's MMA. We wouldn't have women's MMA
Not just
without
women's
her.
MMA, but raised, like, I always make this point that people don't like Ronda, they don't like Conor, they don't like Chael and all these people that because of the way they behave. But I think it's only ever good for MMA. How many people in the future, when we're watching fights, are going to say, I got into MMA because of Ronda Rousey?
A lot.
As a fan, that's all that you can want. You want to see people get into the sport because you never know, you might have another killer on your hands eventually.
And this has happened all throughout the MMA history. Yeah. We've always had trash talkers. We had Tito Ortiz.
Yeah.
We had Brock Lesnar. We had John Jones was even a trash talker. Now we've got McGregor. The cycle will always continue and it's always going to happen.
And say what you want, but they're the biggest fighters.
And look now, look at the prospects you've got now. Sugar Sean O'Malley.
Yeah.
As much as you don't like him, he probably will be one of the next big prospects.
It's sad the reason I don't like him, but like 40% of the reason I don't like him is because of what he wore to the media day. It's like 40% of the reasons that I don't like the guy, which is very sad. But I mean, fighting wise, you can't say anything about him. He looks like a real good fighter. But it's nice to see someone coming from our sport going into another sport, be it professional wrestling, and doing well.
Yeah, I mean, she really did create a great ovation, and it was good to see her enjoying something that she said. She said as well in an interview that it was the first time she's been happy since that Nunes fight.
And that's all you can ever hope for people.
But big news coming out of that,
related to WrestleMania,
signed a brand new WWE contract, something that no one was expecting.
I mean, we were speaking about it the day after, about how he retained his Universal title, and how it would have been weird if he just relinquished that title without anything happening to him.
The betting odds even had him as like a plus 860 underdog. So, and with wrestling, most of the time the betting odds are correct because it's scripted.
And I don't know much about wrestling, but from what I can hear, many people were assuming that Roman Reigns was going to win that fight. Yeah. Crazy to see that he didn't, obviously, and now it's come out that Brock signed a new contract.
Dana White as well was at WrestleMania.
Yeah. But the catch is that the rumours are that his WWE contract allows for him to have at least one more MMA fight. We know he's still contractually signed to the UFC, be it he's allowed to wrestle. Crazy turn of events. I mean, we thought it was a sure thing that he was coming back to the UFC, probably fight once or twice, maybe another 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I didn't see him retaining the title or signing a new contract because speculation has been that he's going to be leaving ever since UFC 200.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I have my thoughts on what the future holds. I mean, we spoke about it a little bit.
I still think he fights the winner of Stipe DC, without a doubt.
I think they're probably gearing up for him to headline one of these big cards. I think with Conor possibly not being able to fight at MSG, and if we're being perfectly honest, that's probably what they wanted to do. Brock might be a headline in MSG for us.
Yeah.
They've made it clear that they want to go back to New York, to Madison Square Garden yearly now, and it's going to be that like big yearly event. I don't see why it couldn't happen.
I think we see Brock drop. The telling sign for when he's coming back is when he drops the belt in WWE. The time he drops that belt is when we start seeing, and you can tell he's gone back into the USADA pool as well, because if you take a look at his body 6 months ago to now, there is a huge difference. I
don't think he's quite in the USADA pool because I think they
or gearing up to go into it.
He definitely looks like he's coming off of something to try and get into that pool. So
very cool. Looked a lot more flabby. Which, although you're looking at Brock Lesnar, in the comparison to his previous shape.
Yeah, I mean, he still looks like an absolute god amongst men.
Yeah.
But compared to what he used to look, I mean, compared to the Mark Hunt fight where he looked as if he'd just injected it into himself.
He's a jacked white boy.
He is a jacked white dude. What can you do? But yeah, I think that's about it for the news.
Only other things is today, Megan Anderson taking on Holly Holm,
Yes.
confirmed for UFC in Chicago.
I would hate to be looking at Cyborg's Twitter right now. I'm sure she's blowing it up.
Other fights rumoured and announced. Miroslav Bektic meant to be taking on Ricardo Lamas. I think that's a real good fight for Bektic.
You really like Bektic as well?
Yeah, he's my tip
Your
to be
prospect of the
next
year.
featherweight champ. Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
No, I think that's about it.
Cool, so that's going to be it for the news. Going to transition into our flashback card. Right, so moving into our flashback card for this week, then we're going to be looking at a Pride event. We're going to be going ahead and looking at Pride 33. Not your typical Pride event, no. The rule sets were changed to the Las Vegas, Nevada Athletic Commission's liking. So we had 3 5-minute rounds and 5 5-minute rounds, unlike the usual 1 10-minute round and 2 5-minute rounds that we usually get in Pride. Like I said, this one was live from America, the second time that they had come back. Pretty sure this was called Pride the Second Coming.
Yes.
So yeah, live from the Thomas and Mack Centre. The commentators for this event was Josh Barnett and Lon McCacken. Later on, we would be joined by Frank Trigg, and we also had a guest appearance from Dennis Kang. Livio, how did you enjoy this card?
It was alright. I enjoyed the card. Obviously, Pride is remembered fondly amongst fans. It's really, really good going back and watching Pride fights and events, especially during Pride Never Die week. Little bit upset that the one that we'd chosen was obviously in America. No stomping on the ground, no elbows and stuff like that. Which I didn't watch much of Vanderlei growing up because obviously I was young when Pride was around. But I watch the highlights now and it's amazing watching him just stomp the hell out of people. But overall, the card was fun. First 2 fights were a little bit tricky for me to get into, but after that, for me, it was a great card, great night of fights, great evening of fights.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. This one weren't like the UFC card that we watched just a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't flow through it. I enjoyed the fights, but the presentation of Pride, although it's good, they had just most of the time was fixed one camera. And although Pride is always remembered as one of the greatest MMA organisations of all time, I couldn't get into this one as much as the UFC card. I enjoyed it, but it was still not as fun in my opinion. They had a few slight digs at the UFC throughout the event as well, which was like, all right, UFC buying you in one event's time.
It's weird watching it with hindsight, knowing what's about to happen.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Like, just for example, quote, "The cage is your world, the ring is your universe." Again, a slight dig saying that UFC is restricted, whereas Pride are not. But yeah, this event obviously is memorable. Going into it, Hendo could become the first ever 2-weight world champ at the time. First ever time that could happen.
Awesome.
And Vanderlei was the only Pride middleweight champion ever at this point. Obviously had lost in the openweight Grand Prix and had lost to Ricardo Almeida as well. My apologies, it was Ricardo Arona in the middleweight Grand Prix, which was eventually won by Shogun. But yeah, in case of title defences, he's the only champ ever.
I mean, it's Vanderlei when Vanderlei, the axe murderer, was Vanderlei. The axe murderer, I mean, he's an absolute killer. Obviously, we'll get to the fight in a little bit. But do you want to start off with the first one?
Yeah, so the first one, we ended up seeing Jason Ireland taking on Joachim Hansen in the lightweight division. Hansen, it was good to see him fight. I like Hansen. I think he's okay. And Jason Ireland as well. I'm pretty sure he had gotten run over by a truck or something crazy
they
like
kept
that.
mentioning that, which is absolutely unbelievable. But, I mean, the guy's tough enough to come back and fight, so most people would out forever after a truck hit him.
Joachim Hansen as well going into this one. Most people would have known him from his knockouts. I think it was a knee strike to the body I think he had previously.
They kept mentioning that.
Yeah, he's good. And yeah,
I can't lie like I knew much about either of these two guys. You would have known a little bit more than me. Jason Ireland, I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of him until I'd watched this. Well, and bar this card, obviously I've heard of the card before, hadn't really seen him fight until I watched this fight. Joachim Hansen seemed like he was in control.
Yeah, I mean, I gave him both rounds going into it. His work on the ground was fantastic. I'm pretty sure there was a roll through where he flipped Ireland and had him in a back mount kind of thing, and it was fantastic. I thought he was really good back sitting position. Hansen had him in, and yeah, I just thought he was really in control throughout the fight.
Definitely. I mean, it was tough because they kept mentioning how Arnold was stepping up, fighting a guy in Hansen who they believe was a little bit better than him, and I feel like that showed in the fight. It showed that the more experienced guy, the tougher guy, was the more experienced than the tougher guy, and maybe it didn't help that he'd just been hit by a train or a bus or whatever it was.
So the fight ended up getting finished. Ireland got a takedown, but I just wrote Hansen did all the damage. Gets a triangle locked in, and then the armbar and a verbal tap by Jason Ireland. Joachim Hansen ended up getting the victory by armbar in round 3 in 2 minutes 33. Overall thoughts on the fight?
Not a bad fight. Not a great fight either. I mean, the finish was really good. I liked how he transitioned from the triangle to the armbar. But other than that, I mean, when you know that you've got so many great fights coming up, you just kind of want to get to them.
Yeah. It's sad as well. The only star in this is Steve Mazzagatti, and he's not a star for the right reasons.
He was in so many of the fights in this card. It was unbelievable.
So in between this, you just watched the individual fights, right?
I did.
I watched the whole event, so I ended up getting all the weird stuff in between.
All the beautiful pride-ness.
Yep. So we had the shouty woman in the background rolling her R's.
Her voice was amazing. I would watch her introduce certain fighters when she'd go, Amer. It was just amazing. It was amazing to watch it.
I've got a personal favourite one which was on here, and I'll leave that for when that fight comes up, because I just wrote his name in capital letters for
it would be
5 lines.
Amazing if at the next UFC event this weekend we get Bruce Buffer doing that. Just going crazy. Justin. Not quite the same, but I mean, he's unconventional in his own sense. So the next fight.
Frank Trigg took on Kazuo Misaki. We ended up getting joined by Dennis Kang on commentary for this one. He recently won the welterweight Grand Prix in Pride. And yeah, Misaki ended up beating Kang in the last fight, which is quite an interesting thing to point out in this one.
Again, Trigg looked dominant from the outstart. Sort of took it wherever he wanted to, which was the ground for most of the fight. Dominant on the ground, threatened with a few submissions, I think, in the early, or not quite submissions, but had him in sort of a head and arm choke position early in the fight. But Trigg doing stuff, I mean, he was an amazing wrestler, so he knew what he had to do for this fight.
Yeah, Trigg won all 3 rounds, 10-9, 10-9, 10-9. Going into the second round, though, Misaki ended up rocking him a little bit on the feet, I thought. But then Trigg started to look a bit tired, so he gets the takedown, lays on him, controls the fight.
Exactly.
Ref stood them up a few times, but then he ended up putting him in the middle. Something that Pride was renowned for, putting fights in the middle because they want to see more action.
You kept seeing that in whenever they'd whenever they were on the ground. Trigg would have his feet up against the ropes. Not Trigg, sorry, in the Henderson fight. Henderson would have his feet up against the ropes, and they kept pushing his feet off. And it's nice to see. I mean, we don't see it very often now. People do work, especially with someone like Khabib, who does a lot of his work against the cage. It'd be interesting to see if he was not allowed to do that and just kept being moved to the center of the ring.
And it's interesting because with the Joe Rogan Bas Rutten podcast, which came out a couple of days ago, they want to get rid of the cage.
They do.
Which, I mean, I don't understand. I like the cage.
I've heard Joe before say that he wants a basketball stadium size thing, and for people to have no glove, which I just think would be silly because you can't dictate the pace of the fight. Then someone could just literally run for a good 10 meters before anything happens. So it's difficult to see how that would quite be enjoyable to fans rather.
But yeah, Trigg gets the win by unanimous decision, 30-27 by all 3 judges. I agree, clearly won the fight, and yeah, I mean, I don't think there was that much going on. Dennis Kang had a few funny lines on commentary, but that was about
it. Like I said, I mean, the first 2 fights were a little bit difficult. This next fight, though, is for me at least, where I begin to remember how amazing Pride was and exactly why Pride was so good.
So we had James Lee take on Travis Fuef. I think this was a catchweight fight because Fuef weighed in at 205 pounds and Lee weighed in at 110.5. Lee stepped on really short notice, from what I heard from the commentators. So I'm going to guess that's why he didn't make weight.
Possibly.
He was a bit chubby as well. And I'm pretty sure this was meant to be a fight for Travis Fuef to come in here and just get the win.
Yeah, didn't quite work out for him that way. He catches him. I think James caught him early or James Lee rather, caught him early, drops him, tried to put some ground and pound, but
Gets a big guillotine.
Yeah.
And
finishes it.
that's it.
Takes the guy
35
out.
seconds in round 1. But just he stepped in on short notice, and wow, fair play.
I mean, couldn't really ask for much more. You're not really trained for the full 3 rounds, because you're not trained for it. So you finish it early, so you don't have to go the full 3 rounds.
Fair play to him.
That's the way to do it.
He did all right. He did really all right. But the next fight we had was Antonio Rogerio Nogueira taking on, who in my opinion had the best announcement of the evening, Sokoju. We had
but did you notice how they only said Sokoju? They wouldn't pronounce the first
Remy
two parts.
Henry, I think it is.
They would not pronounce the first 2 parts of his name.
But yeah, Sokoju took on Antonio Rogerio Nogueira in this fight. Little Nog. But yeah, this fight was clearly meant to be for a Nogueira showcase in America, wasn't it?
I think this was Sokoju's 3rd fight ever.
It was his fourth
fight ever. So
he just lost to Glover Teixeira.
So you could tell what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
Didn't work out for him.
No. So Sokoju come into this fight 2-1. Like I said, with his most recent loss coming to Glover Teixeira. Nicolas Cage was spotted with his goth son.
I know. I was
ringside.
wondering who that guy was. I wasn't sure if it was his son.
Yeah, that is Nicolas Cage's son.
A weird one.
Yeah, a lot of people.
I say weird,
Don't know
not
that.
weird. It makes sense that Nicolas Cage would have a goth son and be at a Pride event 7 or 10 years ago, whenever it was now.
I mean, we look at it now and it's like Harrison Ford's in the crowd. We're like, oh look,
Do you know who
Harrison
else was
Ford's
in the
in.
crowd? Chuck Norris.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he was sat next to Nick Cage.
Yeah, it's sat next to Nicolas Cage and his gothic son.
If that doesn't epitomise Pride, Nick Cage sat next to his goth son and Chuck Norris, at one point singing the national anthem. I mean, what more could you want from Pride?
Oh, and Han Solo's in the crowd. Don't
And
forget
Han
that.
Solo is somewhere around them. I think right behind him as well. It's just craziness.
Oh, and don't forget the blonde bimbos just shouting about as
my
well throughout the
goodness,
fight.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
But this fight, I'm just going to summarise it from my notes just
Go on.
quickly. I'll let you
Sure.
summarise yours. So I've just wrote in capital letters, ha 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 ha. They were talking about Nogueira representing Brazil for the Olympics for boxing, and Sokoju knocks him out with punches.
Now, I went an opposite way. I tried to break down the fight. Sokoju keeping his distance, throwing a few kicks. Nogueira tries to get in, gets caught, gets knocked the fuck out. Basically what happened.
It featured one of our top 10 underdog wins. It finished in number 2 place. Sokoju's odds going into the fight were minus 1,000, and Nogueira was a plus 2,000.
Rightfully so, if we're being honest.
Or is it the other way around? The other way around. Plus 2,000, minus 1,000. You don't see that.
No.
You do not see that. 23 seconds.
Just caught him with a left hand. I mean, granted, he was sort of ducking into it a little bit. But I mean, just imagine being that guy to knock out someone like Nogueira, who's an amazing... I mean, a legend of the sport, if there ever was one, if we're being honest. Both of the Nogueira brothers.
Yeah, Little Nog not known as much, but he's still an amazing fighter.
For sure.
And he just went in there and got knocked out by, at the time, was a no-name.
Tough loss for him, but I mean...
we saw Sokoju later on in the night as well in the corner of Dan Henderson. So, training at Team Quest, I think they said during the video. And Sokoju, big win for him. And he actually went on to win another fight as well in Pride. Pride 34, I think he went on to win as well.
Awesome.
I'm pretty sure he also went on to beat Ricardo Almeida. So I was like, okay. He just went on a bit of a tear. And did fight in the UFC as well, did Sokoju. But yeah, fair play to him.
Exactly.
I thought he made a decent career out of his thing. He wasn't the greatest talent.
No.
Yeah.
He'll always be remembered for that one knockout.
Yeah, I remember at Venator 3, he ended up beating Matt Hamill just a couple of years ago. Venator. That was the same card where Husmar Palhares got knocked out by Emil Meek.
There we go.
Yeah, Luke Barnett fought on that as well. Just a bit of history trivia. But yeah, that's what I remember Sokoju from, is that Venator card, which is just strange.
I
Just
remember
outright.
him from almost literally nothing other than this one knockout.
But yeah, big win for Sokoju. Big things coming his way post-fight.
Yeah.
I mean, he just lost to Glover Teixeira.
Top of the world after the fight.
But yeah, fair play to him. Next fight,
Hayato Sakurai versus Mac Danzig.
the Japanese playboy Sakurai, caught having multiple sex tapes before. I think Sakurai's an amazing fighter.
I mean, he showed it. He was coming on in bursts, but it was really, really good. One thing I will say about Pride is, if ever there was an organisation that had tougher names to pronounce, goodness, some of them are just unbelievable.
Oh, that fight later on with the bloke who beat Semi Schilt before. Do you know who I'm on about? The guy who fought Mike Russo.
Sergey Karatonov.
Yeah. Oh,
That is a tough one.
I was even writing it. I was like, and I had it in front of me.
And still, yeah. Just before that, you obviously had Sokoju, whose name I think I spelled wrong about 1,000 different times in this. But yeah, really, really good fight. This one, I really enjoyed it. I thought Sakurai came in on, like I said, in bursts. But when he did, he looked amazing.
His leg kicks, I thought, were damaging.
Almost took him off the ground at one point. It looked like.
Sakurai was always one of them guys that you wanted to see go back to the UFC. Obviously, he had fought there before, and he's still fighting now. I'm pretty sure he's got a fight against Takanori Gomi and Ryzen coming up, which is like, what?
maybe those special supplements that Ryzen don't mind people having. I didn't really have much going on in the first round. Towards the end, obviously, Sakurai, I think, got him with a hip toss, took him to the floor.
Yep.
Obviously, round 2 starts, where I think Sakurai gets him to the floor again. They eventually get up. Danzig, he doesn't look completely out of it. He looks like he belongs there.
Hey, we've just completely forgot to mention this is future Ultimate Fighter winner Mac Danzig.
There we go.
In here.
But I mean, Sakurai just did his thing and then ended up knocking him out.
Yeah, big win. It's just a showcase, really. I mean, at this point, he's 37-2 in his career.
I mean, what more can you say? I mean, there's a reason that he has a crazy record like that, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
You don't get that record by luck. But yeah, took him to the floor, gets a right hand in right on the chin, knocks him out. And a nice little win for Sakurai.
Yeah, nice win. Obviously, previous UFC welterweight challenger. Yeah, Sakurai has always fought some of the best of the best. If you look at just some of his losses, he's lost to Anderson Silva. He's lost to Matt Hughes, Jake Shields, Nick Diaz, Rodrigo Gracie, Takanori Gomi.
They're
He's
not
fought
losses
the best of the best.
They are not losses that you can hold your head down on. They are like, if you would lose to people, that would be a decent list of people to lose to. But moving on to the next fight. Just spoke about his name.
Yeah.
Tough one to say. Sergey Karatonov versus Mike Russo, who I think was a
Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, he fought an Ultimate Fighter 10. Yeah, like you said, he was I think it was some All-American summit.
One of their wrestling things. But when I was watching the fight, he seemed like he was just out of it on the feet. He just didn't want any business.
I thought he got a nice takedown early on.
He did get a nice takedown early on.
Karatonov, though, if you've watched Karatonov's fights, he's kind of well-versed everywhere. Looking at that fight with Semi Schilt, there's one of the most vicious and one of the most brutal things you'll see. Have you seen it before?
I don't think I have.
So Semi Schilt is on the floor, big bloody 7-foot Dutch kickboxer, and Karatonov is hammer fisting, but he's hammer fisting with his right hand and punching the right eye. So
just going for that. I think I have seen that.
Just once.
I think I have seen that.
He only throws that one strike. He doesn't throw anything else. He doesn't throw with his left, just with that one strike. And you hear Semi Schilt just scream in pain, and the ref stops it. It's one of the most brutal beatdowns that I've ever seen.
So the fight went somewhat how you would have expected with the All-Star American or whatever it's called.
I think it was Russo's debut in Pride.
Going for the takedown early into the fight. Goes into side control and lays a few ground and pound, but doesn't do much. It seems as if instead of trying to ground and pound him out, he was looking for the submission. And unfortunately for him, that didn't quite work out. And he gets caught in an armbar. And I liked, because the referees kept speaking about how... not the referees, the commentators spoke about how Karatonov didn't have much off his back. Obviously caught him in the armbar and made him tap.
Funny thing about this is one of Russo's only 3 defeats in his whole career. His other losses came to Fabricio Verdum and Sean Jordan. This would be his... So, he'd lose this fight in 2007. The next loss that he'd get is 2012.
Dang.
The man went on a 4-fight win streak in the UFC later in his career. I mean...
Decent win streak. I mean, for anyone, especially in the UFC.
He's an alright fighter. I mean, this was the early days of Mike Russo. And hey, did alright.
Didn't like him very much at the end of the fight because he said that he didn't tap.
Oh, yeah.
It was a clear tap.
Josh Barnett wanted him to die.
Oh my goodness. He basically said something along those lines.
He was like, restart the fight or go and fight him in the back and Karatonov will just kill you.
I mean, it's shameful because you quite clearly lost. You quite clearly gave up, tapped, and to claim that you didn't is taken away from the guy.
But then the commentators were saying, did he just complain because Kharitonov didn't let go of the submission?
Maybe it might have been that.
I couldn't really hear Russo that well, so I don't know if it was because of that or not. But
it might have been that. But I mean, it is what it is. The point is that he lost the fight, and it was a fun fight for as long as it lasted. Not really. I mean, the submission was nice, but
yeah, it
short
was
fight submission, not much.
I think a lot of these Pride fights were one guy's in there to get the win.
Yeah.
I mean, even later on in the night, you see things like that as well. And yeah, I think it was like obvious victories that were going to opponents, but sometimes you had the few shock upsets, because I think Pride was more about developing their stars over in the US. So
they didn't mind feeding them a few people.
Yeah,
obviously they had the money, so they could pay people.
Like, look at the Sokoudjou fight. Who would have said, "Oh yeah, Sokoudjou's going to beat Antonio Rogerio Nogueira"? Or who would have said, "Oh yeah, Sergey Kharitonov, he's going to lose to 4-0 Mike Russo"?
You can tell, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. The next fight though, Overeem, just before he became Ubereem, when he was slim, almost still a lot bigger than most humans, taking on Shogun Hua.
I just wrote, yes, Pride Hua. This is the one who won the one night only tournament in Prime. In my opinion, this era is Prime Shogun.
Yeah, I thought Alistair. I mean, granted, the fight didn't last very long. I thought Alistair looked good
on the feet. He looked
on
fantastic.
The feet. He looked very good, and then obviously ends up on his back, and then that diving punch or whatever
nasty from Shogun Hua.
Not wild. Not a wild sort of leaping overhand, but very precise right on the chin. And obviously there's talks about Overeem's weak chin. He was out. It was beautiful to watch.
I thought Overeem looked really good on the feet.
Definitely.
He came into this with a 7-6 Pride record, whereas Shogun had only lost one previous fight. I think he'd won like 11 or 12. Wow. It was in the light heavyweight division. I'm pretty sure that Pride didn't have a belt for this division. There was the middleweight, welterweight, lightweight, and heavyweights they had. But yeah, Shogun was a star at this point. Everyone knew who Shogun was in the MMA world. He was known not as much for his stand-up. He was still known for it, but he was known for the brutal ground and pound that he had. Just that win over Ricardo Arona that you saw in the video package in the finale of the middleweight Grand Prix. Bouncing his head off the canvas. He was going up and down. His fight with Overeem not earlier in that night knocked him out with ground and pound again, where Overeem started off strong. That's what I wrote in my notes. I said that Overeem looked strong in the start of the round, and I said it reminded me of their middleweight Grand Prix first match.
Overeem always looks strong on the feet, though. I mean, the guy is just amazing to watch as long as it's on.
And you could tell he didn't want to go to the ground.
You could tell. I mean, his wrestling's a lot better now, and I'm sure it was okay back then. But I mean, on the feet, he knew where it was. He knew that was his route to victory. Didn't work out for him, and got absolutely mauled with that KO.
Yeah, and what's one of the most infamous still frames in MMA history, where just the punch landing and he's diving. Their still framed shot. Shogun landing that big diving punch, Overeem's out of it, and then he lands a couple more just before the ref can get in.
Well, obviously Overeem was out of it before this.
So, round one knockout for Shogun, and
nice little knockout for Shogun.
On his way to the UFC.
There we go. As was Overeem much later.
Yeah, much later in his career. I think Overeem after this started to focus on Dream. Yeah. And then he went into Strikeforce, as well as K1. Overeem's been everywhere. He's been there and done that.
You forget, because obviously he doesn't look extremely old, but he's like almost 40 years old. He's getting on there.
You forget he fought Chuck Liddell.
Overeem is getting on there.
In Pride.
If only he was allowed to be Ubereem for longer. Just think of what would have happened.
That fight with the Santos could have been one of the best heavyweight fights of all time.
Ubereem and Wanderlei, probably the scariest two humans that have ever lived. I mean, it's tough to make an argument against the two.
And I mean, in the future, we're going to go ahead and watch that K1 Grand Prix 2010, and that is Ubereem taking on Gokhan Saki, Ubereem taking on Tyrone Spong. You got some good fights.
The guy's a killer. Well, I just liked watching this fight because it's Overeem before he become the huge Hulk that he is now. Yeah. It's just nice to see him when he was smaller, and then just think, what did you use that makes you this big?
Yeah.
Just give me it, please. Just let me know what it is.
Hey, horse meat.
Or it's beef.
But yeah, the co-main event was up next. We had
Nick Diaz versus Takanori Gomi. Really good fight. Diaz, man.
Seeing Diaz at 155, or no, 160 I think he weighed in at.
It was a little bit cool seeing as we were watching this fight this week, and it was announced that Diaz is coming back. Obviously, this is a news story more than it is to do with this particular fight, but good news nonetheless.
Yeah, Nick Diaz is going to be returning to the world of MMA. Think of the prospects he could fight. A rematch with George, a rematch with Lawler, Bisping, even a Darren Till fight I'd be invested in. Could you imagine the clean-cut Stephen Thompson who refuses to trash talk coming up against Nick Diaz?
Who just loves to do the
Could you imagine that press conference?
Oh my goodness. It's amazing to... It's just so badly needed at the moment. So bad. I mean, first of all, let's be honest, he shouldn't have been suspended for as long as he was suspended for.
No, without a doubt.
The first one was for weed violation. The second was for location violation.
Yeah,
something like that. But
which, granted, he probably knows he shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
it's the Diaz's. I don't think they care very much.
Yeah.
For me, the weirdest thing is he's due back on the 19th of April.
You know, we're getting an announcement on the 20th.
On the 20th. 420. If there's not an announcement on the 20th of the 4th or 420, then I'll be very upset.
But yeah, this fight though, Takanori Gomi, everyone knows he was an absolute monster in Pride. Came over to the US, took on a very high Nick Diaz, and the fight got overturned, to a no contest in the end
because of.
It's one of the most impressive. If you know the history going into the fight, of how much of a tear Gomi was on, how great he was, how people considered him one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world.
Yeah.
And then you got Nick Diaz, who was coming off a meh run in the UFC.
Who was...
Granted, he'd won his last 2 or 3 in their organisation, but had left.
Something to prove, trying to show people that he belongs with that upper echelon.
And he definitely did that.
He definitely... I mean, I thought the first half of the first round, Gomi looked good, looked very good, for showing why he was Takanori Gomi.
And then it got back up to the feet, and we saw classic Nick Diaz.
We saw Gomi gas a little bit, and then Diaz just do Diaz stuff and just pepper him with shots. Nothing crazy where you could think he's going to finish him with one punch.
Granted, Gomi still knocked him down when they got back to the feet, but he was just swinging wild, like he was Vanderlei.
He was, and Diaz obviously with that boxing and jiu-jitsu background, just pepper him with shots, very precise, very nice to watch. I mean, who doesn't like watching the Diaz's? It's just amazing to watch them just hit you with everything. And
at the end of that first round, I don't know, I say Gomi probably won it in the end. He rocked Diaz as well, overall, I think, at the end.
Yeah, overall.
And it was just a crazy fight.
But going into the second round,
Gomi called Diaz over.
A little bit. Yeah. Oh, because you watched the thing. Yeah, go on.
So Gomi called Diaz over like a come on, like you want some. And the camera just cuts to Diaz just for a split second. And all you see is, what, bitch? What?
I would be upset if he said anything else other than what, bitch, if I'm being honest with you.
I mean, I think that's just the amount of his vocabulary extends to that.
Just those few words. But I mean, what a few good words to have, isn't it? Going into the second round, though.
Catching him again.
Gomi looked like he was sort of done towards the end of the first. And Diaz was probably spilling a little bit of blood. Fight gets stopped halfway through.
Diaz just on a cut,
pouring blood. Then it comes back, Gomi complaining that they should stop the fight because of the injury. And I love the commentator saying, if you think that they should stop the fight, which is the way that it should be. If you think that the ref should stop the fight, then go ahead and stop the fight, finish the guy, if you think that you can't continue.
But Gomi ended up getting Diaz down, and I think Diaz probably ended up going down because he knew he could get the submission because Gomi was so tired. Gets the...
go-go platter.
Yeah. And then ends up switching it to a triangle / going into another go-go platter, Ormo platter. He just gets everything in, and Diaz gets the win. Yeah,
I mean, really, really nice to watch. Beautiful fight, beautiful finish. Diaz showcasing his jiu-jitsu and his boxing against a top-class fighter. It's just nice to see, and it just gets you so excited for his comeback, man.
Yeah, great fight overall. I really enjoyed it. This was the Diaz at 160 pounds. Like... What? He was light.
I probably can't make that now though.
Oh,
especially seeing as every other video he puts up online is him at a club or party or something.
In Vegas,
in
yeah.
Vegas.
He lives his life in Vegas
guy's
now.
Probably like 190 pounds, well, 205 pounds at the moment.
Get MV Jones now.
The final fight of the card.
Before the final fight, I just want to say the build up to this one was very, very pro wrestling-esque, I thought. A lot of fireworks were going off, a lot of shouting, a lot of get them in the ring, then we'll get the belt, and then we'll put the belt around the arena so everyone can look at the belt, and then we'll get them squared off, and then we'll get them back to weight, and then we'll do the introductions, and then we'll do this. It was very pro wrestling-esque.
Now, you watched the event and I watched the fights. I skipped through most of it. I did catch that they did the national anthems, and it just made me realise how happy I am that they don't do the national anthems now. Because some of these events that we watch nowadays can go on for hours. Like, we'll be up till 6 in the morning watching them. If it's 5 o'clock in the morning and they start doing the US national anthem and then the Brazilian national anthem, I may have cried if I was watching an event then. Fight itself was amazing.
Yeah, I
they'd
really
fought once
enjoyed it.
before this, hadn't they?
Yeah,
Vanderlei
Vanderlei
won.
had beat Dan Henderson before. Close
Henderson with a
fight.
chip on his shoulder, seems like it.
Going into this, Henderson was the welterweight champion. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Welterweight champ, going up, stepping up for another belt. First ever time this had ever happened that we could potentially get a 2-belt world champ at the same time. And well,
I mean, it was a good fight for as long as it lasted.
the first round, Hendo slipped, and Vanderlei got on top. I thought it was a really difficult round to call, that first one, because I thought although he slipped, Vanderlei controlled him quite well. But then when they got up on their feet, Henderson looked a lot better than Vanderlei, which is
really,
strange.
really Vanderlei looked. I mean, throughout the fight, he looked a little bit defensive. He didn't seem. I mean, we know Vanderlei is this aggressive monster. Didn't seem aggressive. Maybe he was trying not to get caught by that H-bomb, as we say.
It seemed like he respected the power of
I think because
him.
if I remember correctly, watching some of the highlights of that first fight, it seemed as if Henderson had him hurt in that first fight. So obviously he's seen that, and then I'm sure that he didn't want to get caught again. Obviously we'll get into what happens in the fight, but yeah, that first round, very close one. I gave the edge, I think you gave the edge as well, to Vanderlei.
Yeah, 10-9 I had it. Or it could have even been a 10-10.
It could have been. It was a very close round. Neither guy did crazy amounts of damage, but I mean, you can make the case for Henderson because he was a little bit more aggressive, and then obviously Vanderlei controlled him a little bit better on the ground.
Going to the second round though, it was great work in the clinch from Hendo. Gets Vanderlei on the ground, and then keeps him on the ground for the rest of the round. Silva did literally nothing in this second round. Hendo was all over him, some great strikes, and I gave a 10-8 to Hendo.
I mean, not a bad job. I mean, it's tough being on the ground with Dan Henderson on top of you, who's an absolutely outstanding wrestler. So, I mean, you can't really fault Vanderlei for that. Henderson's one of the best when it comes to wrestling. Then that third round starts.
I thought Vanderlei looked very frustrated.
Yeah.
Henderson hits a mental spinning back fist.
Which was... I mean, I think I've watched this fight before and still wasn't expecting the spinning back fist to come. Awesome. Caught Vanderlei off guard, rather. Stunned him a little bit.
Hits a lovely left hand.
Yes.
And although everyone always goes on about the right hand of Henderson...
Yeah, it was
he hit
left
him with
hand,
the
right
left.
hand, and then left hook again or something like that.
Lovely combo, lovely
Beautiful.
finish. And Dan Henderson is your first ever 2-weight world champ, people.
Set a precedent.
Gone up from welterweight to middleweight and planted the seeds for what we would see in the UFC in the future, what we would see in Bellator in the future, what we'd see in the WSOF.
And it should not be understated that the person that he beat was Vanderlei Silva, who, I mean, we forget, some of the newer fans might forget now how good he was, because obviously Vanderlei's somewhat out of his prime now.
I'm pretty sure going into this fight, Vanderlei had 23 wins inside of Pride. And
It's
had
just
like
crazy
2 losses.
numbers, crazy numbers. And when you think of how good he was, it's just that much better for Hendo, this win.
Yeah, mental win for Hendo. Fantastic. Celebrities started to go as they panned on the celebrities, and then you see a producer run across, which I found quite funny to put them back over. But yeah, crazy for Henderson, and I was very happy for him. Yeah,
for sure. Overall thoughts on the card? I know we spoke about it a little bit in the beginning, but
I really enjoyed it. Talking about it now, I'm enjoying it more than what I did previous.
I think it's difficult because whenever you watch something that was filmed a while back, it's not in HD quality, and you get so used to the routine of the UFC, which is a little bit, some say like a professional sport, others say a little bit boring. It's nice to get that break. It's just nice remembering how good Pride was, man.
Yeah, Pride was such a fun place to watch fights. The official attendance, though, for this was 12,911 with 8,334 paid. The gate, 2,033,000. Yeah, just fun, wasn't it?
Awesome. I mean, it's important to remember that this card here is usually regarded as one of the best Pride events ever.
Yeah, well, when you look at Tapology with the greatest rank, the greatest event, of all time, it's number 4.
Dang. I mean, you can't really complain.
Like, when you look at events that are higher than Pride 33, all you've got is the tough finale one, Shogun versus Henderson, UFC 139 and UFC 100.
You really can't say much more about this card other than that. It's an awesome card, awesome fights, awesome fighters. It's nice reminiscing, and it just goes to show how much Pride gave to the sport. Not just amazing events, but these fighters they helped build that would go on to be future UFC champions, future legends of the sport, future Hall of Famers, and it's amazing, man.
Cancelled bouts that were supposed to happen. So we were meant to get Mark Hunt on this card. He was supposed to take on Wes Sims, former Tough 10 competitor, former guy who'd fought Frank Mir before.
Would have loved to see Mark Hunt on this card.
Yeah, definitely. Sergey Karatonov wasn't originally supposed to be facing Mike Russo. Gilbert Yville was supposed to be his opponent. Ville was prohibited by the NSAC though, so Nevada.
Didn't quite work out.
Yeah, Wes Sims, Mark Hunt as well. It was ruled as an uncompetitive fight, so clearly they've said.
They said, we don't mind you building people off of these no names, but maybe every now and then we'll stop it just to say that we care. But another interesting thing about this card is to see how many of the fights actually didn't go the distance.
Yeah,
complete different to what you see nowadays with so many fights going to the distance. I mean, I think only two fights went the distance in this.
Just one.
We
had 9 fights overall, and 8 fights went by finish.
What more can you say about Pride? Just what more? Awesome fights, awesome finishes. Nice to reminisce.
Yeah, really lovely card. And yeah, should we announce what we're going to be doing next? So for the next card that we're going to be looking at for our flashback card, since it is the anniversary of Forrest Griffin versus Stephen Bonnar, we're going to be going ahead and looking at the Ultimate Fighter 1 finale and UFC Liddell versus Couture 2. Are you excited going into this?
I am a little bit. The Ultimate Fighter 1 finale is the one fight that whenever you speak to an MMA fan, or most MMA fans, and you ask them, why are you into MMA? They're like, because I was watching TV one day and I managed to turn on this fight and it was amazing. And I've been a fan ever since. And I mean, for good reason. The fight's an absolute amazingly good fight, rather.
I mean, and the whole build-up. I think I'm going to go back and watch the whole of Tough. Just because it's so easy to go back and watch. If you look at the names who are on there, you've got Diego Sanchez, Kenny Florian, Josh Koscheck, Mike Swick, Stephen Bonnar, Forrest Griffin. The names that come off are some of the greatest MMA fighters that UFC have seen.
I mean, it was the Ultimate Fighter before the Ultimate Fighter became what it is now, where it's basically now is something that they use to build divisions when they can't build a division themselves. It's got to that sort of level now.
So with Tough 1, we're going to be looking at just the main card with that one. So we won't be looking at the prelims, so like the Chris Lieben fights, etc. But the main cards, we're going to be looking at Kenny Florian taking on Diego Sanchez. For the winner of that will become the middleweight winner of the Ultimate Fighter, which is crazy to think them two guys fighting at middleweight. Diego Sanchez has gone to featherweight. Kenny Florian has gone to featherweight.
Yeah.
Crazy to think. We'll see Forrest Griffin taking on Stephen Bonnar for the light heavyweight tournament winner. And then in the main event, we have Ken Shamrock taking on Ken Shamrock taking on Rich Franklin. Which is like...
Not a bad fight. I mean...
For Rich Franklin, I remember at this point, he was up and coming and he was looking to make a name off of him.
It's difficult to get, even though it was Ken Shamrock before years now, it's difficult to get excited over Ken Shamrock, seeing as he was still fighting like 4 years ago. Yeah. He was like 50 years old. And
kick me in the balls.
Exactly, the toughest thing ever to watch. I mean, he fought on that Kimbo Dada card. I think it's just tough. And then
he was the main event against Hoyce.
Oh my goodness. It's just tough to get excited for his fights after you've seen him in that.
So, as well as that, we're going to be looking at UFC 52. So, we're going to see prime Chuck Liddell taking on Randy Couture, as well as that co-main event of Matt Hughes and Frank Trigg. Travis Hughes, who we literally just saw a minute ago, he's going to be taking on Renato Sobral. Matt Lindland and Travis Luter are on this card. We get to see early GSP as well, with the prelims as well. Joe Riggs, Patrick Cote, Mike Van Arsdale. We got a lot of good fighters.
Looking forward to it, man.
A lot of good fighters. So yeah, that's going to be it that for the next one.
Yeah.
So we've got Tough One Finale and UFC 52. Right, going into the next segment of the podcast, then we're going to be going ahead and picking our fight picks for UFC Fight Night Glendale. It's going to be the main event of Dustin Poirier taking on Justin Gaethje, co-main event of Carlos Condit and Alex Oliveira. We've got the Just Bleed main and co-main events. Then we got Israel and Adesanya taking on Marvin Vettori, and then we got Michelle Watson taking on Courtney Casey to close out the main card. Just looking at the prelims, some cool fights that are there. Yushin Okami going down to welterweight after his last fight at light heavyweight. He's going to be taking on Diego Lima, who we just saw in the final of the Ultimate Fighter. I thought that's a really fun fight. We got Arjan Singh Bulla, who made controversy. I think he was, or made steps as well. I think he was the first fighter to come out in a turban.
Yeah. I think the UFC weren't happy about it, I don't think, but I know what you're saying. He came out, obviously, due to his faith and where he's from and stuff like that.
Anyway, he's fighting on there.
Yeah.
Luke Sanders is on there as well. We've got Matthew Lopez and Alejandro Perez. I think it's a really fun fight. Christoph Jotko versus Brad Tavares on the Fox prelims. I think it's a fun fight. We've got Wilson Hayes and John Moraga.
Yeah.
And then you got to headline the prelims, Tim Boach taking on Antonio Carlos Jr. Fun prelims.
Fun prelims. I mean, fun overall card. These fight nights have been getting better and better.
I think just having these mass amount of fighters on the roster, you've got good fighters everywhere. So all these cards just end up being great.
There's rumours that the UFC have finally settled on a TV deal as well.
Yeah,
so maybe...
ESPN and NBC.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Which is very interesting because no more Fox.
No.
And ESPN, who we know are heavy on boxing.
Yeah.
And NBC, which, I mean, personally, I don't know much about NBC.
I don't think they do much sports. I think they do. I think they might do baseball and soccer and stuff like that. Again, we're not in America, so we don't know what they do. But,
but
interesting to see.
Fair enough.
This main event is and the co-main as well. Both really, really exciting fights. Really
Cowboy coming in on just 2 weeks' notice.
Exciting fighter. Should be a good one. Do you want to start off with your picks? Or do you
start the main card? So, first fight of the evening, you've got Michelle Watson taking on Courtney Casey. Fun fight. Hopefully we see the Karate Hottie get back on a winning ways. Obviously losing 2 straight to Namajunas and Torres. Taking on Courtney Casey, number 10 ranked versus number 7. I think Michelle Watson gets this done. I think she gets a round 3 submission on this one.
Okay.
I don't know. I see her coming back. Courtney Casey hasn't looked too bad in her last few performances. But I think Watson comes back and gets the victory on this one.
I went back and forth a little bit, and I'll tell you for why. Because overall, I think that Michelle Watson probably gets a unanimous decision. Reason I went back and forth is because I was looking at some of their stats, and Michelle Watson gets hit. Doesn't have a great doesn't have a great strike defense, and Courtney Casey throws a lot of strikes. So for that reason, I thought that maybe she would get outstruck and eventually lose the fight. But I think her experience will probably play into a little bit, and Michelle Watson probably gets back into winning ways. Unanimous decision, Michelle Watson.
Unanimous decision for Watson, and then I'm going to be going for a round 3 sub. Moving into the next fight, then on the main card, we got Israel Adesanya. He's going to be taking on Marvin Vettori. I think this is going to be quite a close fight. A lot of people have got Israel as a heavy favourite, calling him potentially the next John Jones. I see this as a bit of a tough fight for him because Vettori is a guy who likes to grind out victories. Although he doesn't have a great takedown ratio, I think he's good on the feet. I think he's okay with the takedowns. Although I don't see Israel losing this fight, I'm going to go with a KO in round 2 for Israel.
Cool. Now, you were almost on the hype train, just about sitting on the fence. I am firmly on the Israel Adesanya hype train. I think he gets it done. I think it's a good test for him because, like you said, this guy, it's not an easy fight for him. So I think it's very showing that if he does win, which I'm guessing that he does, I picked for him to win round 2 KO.
Yeah, so we got the same prediction. So both got round 2 KO for this one. So I don't know. Maybe we
I think
might
they're
get it
trying
right.
to push him. I think they're trying to push him, and for that reason, I feel as if
I mean,
he's probably
putting him on the Fox main card over the likes of Tim Boach, over the likes of Wilson Hayes and John Moraga,
Yeah.
which is a number 10 versus number 6 flyweight
I mean,
fight.
Wilson Hayes, former title contender, so
Yeah, putting him on the main card
Yeah.
is a big statement for
clearly
him.
showing faith in the man. And I mean, one of the better nicknames out there, if we're being honest.
So the co-main event of the evening, we're going to see the return of the natural-born killer Carlos Condit, recently coming off a loss to Neil Magny. He's going to be taking on Alex the Cowboy Oliveira. Oliveira stepping in on 2 weeks' notice. Originally it was supposed to be Matt Brown versus Condit, which I was very hyped up for.
I don't think anyone wasn't hyped for that fight.
Oliveira, though, is still a very game fighter, and I've got him to win by decision.
I went the opposite. I think Carlos Condit. So obviously his last fight was a little bit. He didn't offer very much. I think with Oliveira you can't do that because he goes forward. He likes to be a bit more aggressive. I think Condit is fairly decent at counter striking, so I think he does well in the first round. And in the second round, I think Condit finishes him.
So what is it? KO.
Carlos Condit KO/TKO round 2.
So you got a Condit TKO/KO round 2. I'm going with a decision for Oliveira.
Yeah.
The problem with Carlos Condit is he said before he doesn't like fighting.
Yeah.
And the problem with not liking fighting is sometimes you get the motivation away.
Especially if you're out for so long, and obviously he's back now, but he had a short period of time where he was out.
And Cowboy likes fighting.
Yeah.
So I think we've seen Oliveira before in wars. We've seen him in fights where maybe he hasn't looked the best, but I think recently we've seen a bit of a rejuvenated Alex Oliveira. And I see him coming in here and getting the win.
Yeah.
I see him coming in and getting the shock win on short notice. 2 weeks he's had to prepare for this fight. Maybe he might miss weight, maybe he won't. But personally, I see Alex Oliveira coming away with the victory in this
I hope
one.
this fight happens. I just cannot bear another fight falling through at this point. I think it might be the end of me. Moving on to the main event though. One fight that I think, again, everyone's very interested in. Dustin the Diamond Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. Crazy fight on paper. How do you have it going?
I've got Poirier to win by 4th round knockout. I see Gaethje's style as something that won't last him very long in the UFC. If you look at that first fight with Michael Johnson, it is one of the best fights UFC have ever put on. It was one of the fights of the year at that point. And it's not a great strategy. You can't go in there and just go, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to throw leg kicks and just see what happens.
Eventually that chin goes and you'll get caught.
And we saw that with the fight against Eddie Alvarez. Eddie Alvarez caught him with a lovely knee. And if you look at that fight, Eddie wasn't having success early on. The first 2-3 minutes, Gaethje was catching him and he was keeping him at distance with leg kicks. But Alvarez started to work the body shots. He kept working the body shots, and then that opened up the head. The head got opened, Gaethje got taken out, big knee, and it ended it.
I agree. I disagree with the round, but I agree overall that I think Dustin Poirier probably finishes it. I went round 3 KO or TKO. I think Dustin's just a slightly smarter fighter in the way that he fights. I mean, maybe out there, Justin Gaethje's got a better fight IQ or whatever. The way he fights it doesn't show, unfortunately. Also think maybe because Gaethje's supposed to be an amazing wrestler, I think maybe if he switches it up and goes for a different game plan, he could do it. But from what I've seen of him and what he showed us, I think Dustin Poirier gets it finished.
Granted, Poirier has lost most of his fights by being stopped. I don't see him getting stopped here. No. If you look at the way he's fought since he's gone up to lightweight, he defeated Carlos Ferreira, defeated Yancy Medeiros, defeated Joseph Duffy, defeated Bobby Green. Granted, he did get knocked out by Michael Johnson at this weight class in just a minute.
Yeah.
But he's beat Jim Miller since then, had a very controversial fight with Eddie Alvarez, which got turned to a no contest, which I think he won the first round of. And then he went on and beat a former champion in Anthony Pettis.
I think he won. I personally feel like he won most of that Eddie Alvarez fight. Oh, how many rounds did it last?
Second round, 4-12.
Second round, okay. So I think I felt like he was winning the first and the second round until obviously the stoppage for knees on the head when he was down or something like that. Yeah, man, I think he's a man on the mission at the moment. I think he's trying to prove that he belongs to this weight class, and he's proved it so far. I think a win over Gaethje will cement him as belonging in this weight class. Because say what you want about Pettis, he's a man falling at the moment, unfortunately for him. So it's an interesting fight to see, but Yeah, not very different picks there between us. I don't think.
No.
I think there was only one we disagreed on.
Yeah, the Michelle, was it Michelle?
Condit.
Oh,
I think
Condit.
I had Condit winning. You had Oliveira winning.
So very tight predictions. Looking at the leaderboard for the last one.
You may have beat me this week.
So only 2 fights
Yeah.
went on from our original predictions. So we had the Joanna Jędrzejczyk Rose Namajunas fight. So just to clarify, you get 1 point for a win and then 2 points for a perfect prediction.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting 2 perfect predictions. Like, what? And do you know what? If all the fights went through, it would have been a full perfect prediction.
Well, I accept defeat this week, last week rather, or this week, whatever. I will come back. I like to leave people in suspense. I like to play the underdog story and come back right at the end.
So it's 4-0 going into this week then. 4 fights on this one. Could see anything happen.
I can't come back and win, but I can close the gap to 2. It'll be interesting to see.
So that's going to be it then for this podcast this week. We'd like to say thank you very much to everyone who's been listening at home. Thank you if you've just listened to the individual parts of the podcast or if you've listened to it in full. Down below you have the opportunity to follow us on Twitter as well as following us on SoundCloud, where we'll be uploading the podcast as well. Future we'll be uploading them to iTunes, but just for the minute we're going to build a little bit of a fan base up before we go ahead and extend the market. So thank you very much to everyone who's been watching. Don't forget, next week is going to be the UFC 52 card and the Ultimate Fighter 1 finale. So that's going to be it for this week. I've been James.
And I've been Livio.
Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you all guys very soon.